which is not something that's necessarily going to be reflected in the blood test values. Like, it's not going to say, like, does your dick work on a reference range, you know? So a lot of that stuff you need to figure out yourself too.
Interesting. So would me taking, say, 240 or 200, like in that range, like I've told you, I don't know if it's even in the exact range. The measuring is hard.
Yeah.
But if I'm in that range and say I do, you know, get all the symptom relief that I'm looking for, could I lower it down?
Yeah, you could titrate down and see kind of like where the minimum effective dose is to achieve symptom relief.
Because the whole point of doing it was to get there faster. I didn't want to stay at 200.
The problem when you try to get there faster by introducing like a bolus amount at one time is you're almost like, it's not like you're overshooting optimal, but you're not getting an accurate representation of what consistent hormones feels like, or what, like, you're getting to such a hyperandrogen dominant state so quickly. You have all of these hormones going where you have super physiological testosterone, super physiological estrogen, super physiological DHT, super physiological blood building, super physiological this, all happening at the same time. So like you might end up in a situation where it's like, this isn't even representative of what normal TRT is. And you might be like, oh, like it doesn't feel optimal. It's like, well, we don't even know what your optimal is, you know? So like maybe you feel good, maybe you don't, but it's like, it doesn't mean if you don't feel good that you got there faster and then you
I
need.
hear what you're saying.
Yeah, it's hard to put into words, but I think you get it.
I get it. It's still 200 is not a lot. How to Beast was 175.
It's not a lot.
It's not like that's a big jump.
No, but in general, like it depends again on the context of, again, like a Canadian reference range, anything more than 840 nanograms per deciliter, they would say you're too high, which is like, could be a guy at like 125 milligrams a week. You could be like way too high by Canadian standards, but it doesn't mean that dose is too high objectively to actually increase your quality of life and symptom relief to where you need it. Right. So a lot of this comes down to like arbitrary, is this number mean anything at the end of the day versus my symptom relief?
Could it be dangerous, the number I'm taking?
It's just a guideline. But yeah, it could be potentially. I would speculate that 240 lifelong is less healthy than 125. You know, like I bet you could use half the dose and probably get the same symptom relief and or feel as good, if not better. Maybe not get as much muscle growth out of it, but from like a quality of life and health standpoint, I would probably speculate you'd be healthier with half of that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Doesn't mean you can't do it acutely.
But it's not necessarily unhealthy being on this dose.
Might be.
It might be.
Yeah, it might put on more stress on your heart. Like, we don't know.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I got you.
It's definitely going to make it harder to control your blood pressure. It's going to make it harder to do a lot of things.
I've been checking and I'm fine.
What is it?
My blood pressure?
Yeah.
Like exactly. I think it was 85 over 120.
You mean 120 over 85?
Yeah. That.
Yeah. But in addition to that, it doesn't just come down to your blood pressure on paper too. It also comes down to things like cardiac remodeling is not going to be based just on what your blood pressure is. It's going to be based on like androgenic signaling. That is so distracting.
Sorry. I'm just looking
at,
you said I'm looking at my heart rate. That's what I'm checking.
What is it?
Oh
yeah, but another thing to note too, the higher your dose, likely the higher your resting heart rate is, which clinically has been proven now that the higher your heart rate is, the higher likelihood there is of dying. So for example, even 10 more beats per minute increases your chance of dying by like, I don't know what it was, like 10, 20% or something.
So my heart rate has gone up 10.
And again, that factoid I just throw out there is such a rough ballpark, but you know what I mean. Like if you go look it up, higher heart rate at rest is associated with higher likelihood of dying. Like we know that now.
So today's a bad example because my the averages for today.
Yeah.
Due to the activity I've done today, it's not like say a day where I'm actually like at rest for the whole day.
Yeah.
My average right now is 55.
Yeah, that's good.
Per minute. But before this, I was averaging like anywhere from 45 to 47 or 48. So it's gone up about 10. I would say, yeah, it's gone up about 10. But my heart rate was so low before.
So there's definitely a happy medium to be said too, because it's like obviously the most longevity. If you just like this, a lot of this is balancing quality of life versus how long you want to live.
Yeah.
Because you could technically live longer by being a lower body weight.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, the thing that's going to stress your organs the most is how much do you weigh? Like how big of a human are you? Like how much demand is there to support your organs? So it's not just the test that's making you have a higher heart rate that's going to make you die quicker.
Yeah.
It's also just the fact that you're a bigger human that has more demand. So it's like you also have to balance out like, sure, maybe you might live a couple of years longer without a heart attack if like eventually something's going to happen. You're going to get cancer or a heart attack. Most likely, you know, one of the two scenarios, you end up with something that's cardiovascular or cancer related. That's just inevitable. No one's going to live to fucking 150 with none of those problems. So it's like, how long do you want to put that off in order? Do you want to be like a cold, like no energy, like non-functional, enjoying life human, but drag out another like 5 to 10 years of longevity, or improve your quality of life and be a bit more muscular and be a bit more higher energy, increase, you know, your metabolic rate a bit more, so you know, burn up more substrate, and it maybe is more costly from like a energy intensive taxing your body aspect, but it increases your quality of life during those years.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day too, like, it's not like I'm saying the 240 or the 200 or the 175 is like definitely gonna like fuck you up versus 120.
That's not a big heart rate increase.
No, exactly. Like, you're within reason. It's like the ROI on that, it's a big difference between a guy going from 45 to 55 than a guy going from like 70 to like 100. Yeah. You know, like if you're somebody who started TRT and your resting heart rate is already like borderline questionable, and then all of a sudden your high blood pressure, your resting heart rate goes tachycardia, like all this shit. Like, yeah, maybe it's being harmful at your dose. You need to like really reel it back.
But you know what? You always say this. I think part of the reason why I'm not seeing such detrimental effects is because I'm microdosing.
That's it. Yeah. So obviously,
I'm never hitting 200 at once.
Yeah, it becomes a lot more tolerable when your body's introduced like little micro administrations on a daily basis, replicating what your endogenous production would actually do, because it's on a pulsatile diurnal rhythm.
Yeah.
Where you like your balls don't just like chronically, they don't just like spike a like fuck ton of tests one time a week and then wait till you crash and then spike it again. It's like little bits here and there every day. So like
that makes it safer, doesn't it?
I would say so.
Because like I'm taking like, what would that be, like 30 or I write it down so I can add it up and it doesn't go past that number.
Yeah.
So I'm taking between 30 to 40 milligrams a dose.
Yeah.
Which is so much safer than 200 in one go.
Yeah, definitely. If you're gonna if you want to compare like cumulatively per week, even though your androgen exposure is the same between the two options, obviously the micro administrations I would argue is definitely healthier, not only from a side effect aspect, but just like hitting your body at once with a bolus of androgens is going to put your body into like fight or flight state, probably way more aggressively.
Right.
Probably gonna fuck up your sleep. You're gonna have very big fluctuations, and when you like,
I'd be too scared to try it, dude.
Yeah.
I would like if. So I think this is a good caveat to include here. It's not like I'm taking 240 in one go.
Yeah.
See, in my mind, that changes all of the parameters you're talking about, or at least it changes them a little bit.
Well, a little bit, yeah. I would still argue from a like if this was literally what you're gonna dial in for your long-term routine.
Yeah. I
would be like, what's the minimum effective dose to get everything you want? You know, because it's like
I wasn't planning on it.
Yeah, exactly. So eventually you're going to dial it back. And
I wanted to be on lowest effective dose.
Yeah, and I know people in the comment section are just going to be like, "Oh, it's like way too much. Like this is blasting." And it's like I would probably agree, but it's at the end of the day, this is like acute exposure for like part of it. I guess is experimental. At the end of the day, like you're just starting this. Like how many guys have done like tons of cycles who are probably going to be judging like what you're doing in this one moment for like a couple of weeks. Like it's not, you could easily pull it back whenever you want. It's not like you're going to die in the next 2 weeks because of what you're doing.
Right. That's a fair point. I'm testing out 240 to see how I feel, to see how my heart rate, my blood pressure is affected.
Yeah.
And to see,
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm doing this religiously. Like, you know, those people, they make those plans that they have to follow no matter the side effects.
Yeah.
Like if I see bad side effects, I'll reel it back, of course.
Yeah. And obviously your long-term plan, like you just said, is not this. So
no.
Yeah.
No, I just really wanted to. Here's my logic also. In my head, I'm like, if I'm going to do this, why would I just do it to get to normal levels?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I can take, a bit more and reach like super physiological levels, I actually see, we both of us like to experiment.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see, like teeter-totter on the line of like, where you're just at that point where it's like, it's not dangerous yet, but if you went a little bit higher, it could be like, I wanted to find the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Easily said.
Sure. Yeah,
so
and
that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and this is where like the debate comes in if like you should be allowed to do that from like a medical context. Like should you be allowed to optimize yourself even though it might be like slightly more unhealthy than, keeping like bare minimum like normal as fuck ranges but not having like a bit more muscle and a bit more, I don't know, motivation or whatever it is. And ultimately that's a personal perspective. I can't say for certain like this is bad or good because everyone has their own individual goals and you can't just like quantify like this much is too much because you're super physiological. Like maybe some people again need that for symptom relief and some people maybe they just want to be optimized in what they consider optimized relative to
me is being on drugs. I wanted to see if I could take TRT to get me off the other drugs.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I was also like, so if I take a higher dose of this, maybe I'm more likely to want to kick the other drugs.
Right.
So I've got that interplay as well, which is huge.
And obviously, you know, I can just imagine people are like, it's just replacing one bad habit for another. And it's just like, this is like, ultimately everyone's going to do their own thing from an experimental aspect. Like, this is not us saying this is an ideal way to do a medical intervention. Like, this is like just you experimenting. Yeah. I just want to make clear, because we were talking about HRT and then sort of we're transitioning into talking about like super physiological levels and like getting off of kratom and having TRT in there instead, kind of thing.
I've openly said this already. I wanted to replace kratom with the testosterone to see how, you know, to see if it was a fitting replacement.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to make sure that context is pretty clear. But yeah, like I definitely think the choice in general to try TRT was probably really viable and warranted for you, given like all the health stuff. As far as like the super physiological experimentation, that's your decision at the end of the day.
I don't think it's that high. I don't think 200 to 240 is high. You're making me feel like this is a huge dose that I'm taking.
No, I'm just trying to make clear to people who are learning about this for the first time that that's not like TRT.
Like the doctor literally said we could bump you up to 200.
Yeah. And some doctors in the States would literally put you on 300 and be like, see, like this is normal.
Right. I understand that just because the doctor said that doesn't mean that it's healthy. But in my head, it's not high. But, you know, you're more educated than
I'm just like an extreme like harm reduction platform. So that's like all I'm trying to say.
I think people understand that the optimal dose is like 120 for most individuals. And I think a lot of people understand that everyone is different and some people do need more.
Yeah.
And the only way to know is with the blood work.
Yeah. And assessing like longitudinal data of your own like state from a symptom aspect too, which is not something that's necessarily going to be reflected in the blood test values. Like it's not going to say like, does your dick work on a reference range, you know? So a lot of that stuff you need to figure out yourself too.